The classroom door swung open, and Jake Torres felt his heart stop dead. His twin daughters stood trembling at the front of the room, not in the pink flower dresses they'd left home wearing, but in grotesque clown costumes. Oversized rainbow fabric swallowed their small bodies. Garish face paint smeared with tears. Emma's hands shook violently, her autism sending her into visible shutdown. Sophie stood in front of her sister, trying to shield her both girls sobbing, while their teacher pointed a phone directly at their faces. Recording. Laughing. Every other child sat dressed normally. She had stripped his daughters and costumed them the moment they arrived. Behind him, 200 motorcycle engines roared to life. The wolves had come. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. Your support helps this story travel further than we ever imagined. Now stay with us until the very end, because what happens next will stay with you long after it's over. Jake Torres knew something was wrong with his daughters 3 weeks before he understood how wrong. It started with the singing. Emma and Sophie had always sung together. Not real songs, not anything from the radio or television. They made up their own melodies, wordless harmonies that floated through their small apartment like proof that joy existed in the world. Emma hummed the low notes. Sophie carried the high ones. They'd been doing it since they were 3 years old, this private language between twins that nobody else could understand or join. 3 weeks ago, the singing stopped. Jake noticed it on a Tuesday morning. He was making breakfast, scrambling eggs the way both girls liked them when he realized the apartment was silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes you check if something's broken. He walked to their bedroom door and found them sitting on Emma's bed, faces close together, hands intertwined. They weren't singing. They weren't talking. They were just holding each other, and when Sophie looked up at her father, something in her eyes made his stomach drop. "Everything okay, baby girl?" Sophie nodded too quickly. "We're fine, Daddy." But she wasn't fine. Neither of them was fine. Jake had raised these girls alone for 4 years, ever since their mother decided motherhood wasn't compatible with her need to find herself in California. He knew his daughters better than he knew the sound of his own motorcycle engine. He knew when Sophie's fine meant fine, and when it meant something else entirely. This was something else entirely. Emma hadn't looked up at all. His autistic daughter, the one who usually greeted him with a specific flap of her hands that meant, "Good morning, Daddy," sat perfectly still. Her eyes were fixed on a stuffed bear in her lap. Not playing with it, not talking to it the way she sometimes did, just holding it against her chest like it was the only solid thing in a world that had gone liquid and dangerous. "Emma, sweetheart, you want eggs? Nothing. Not a flap, not a hum, not even the eye contact that she'd worked so hard to learn in therapy." Sophie's hand tightened on her sister's. "She's not hungry, Daddy. We're not hungry." Jake stood in that doorway for a long moment, watching his daughters hold on to each other like survivors of something he couldn't see. He told himself it was a phase. Kids went through phases. The therapist had said Emma might have periods of withdrawal. Maybe Sophie was just being sympathetic. Twins did that. He told himself a lot of things in those first few days. None of them were true. The second week was worse. Maria arrived at 7 every morning, the same as she had for 3 years. She was 63 years old, a grandmother 5 times over, and she loved Jake's daughters like they were her own blood. She'd raised her children in Mexico, immigrated when she was 40, buried her husband when she was 55, and found purpose again in caring for 2 little girls who needed someone while their father worked at the garage. "Something is wrong with the niñas," she told Jake, on a Wednesday evening, her weathered hands twisting together. "They don't eat, they don't play. They whisper to each other, but when I come close," she made a gesture like birds scattering. Nothing. Silence. Jake was sitting at the kitchen table, still wearing his work clothes, grease under his fingernails. "I know. I've been watching it too. Emma won't let go of that bear. She used to play with all her animals. Now just the bear. Only the bear. She sleeps with it. She eats with it. She takes it to the bathroom. She's always had her favorites. Not like this." Maria's eyes were sharp despite her age. "This is different. This is a child holding on to something because everything else feels unsafe. I've seen it before, mijo, in children who've been through things they can't talk about." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying something happened. I don't know what. But something happened to those girls and they're too scared to tell us." Jake called the school the next morning. He got transferred twice before reaching Mrs. Bradley, the girls' first-grade teacher. Her voice was professionally cheerful, the tone of someone who'd perfected parent management over years of practice. "Mr. Torres, so nice to hear from you. How can I help?" "I'm worried about Emma and Sophie. They've been different lately, withdrawn, not eating well. I wanted to check if anything's been going on at school." A pause. Just a heartbeat too long. "The girls are doing wonderfully in class. Emma's been participating in all our activities, and Sophie is such a helper, always looking out for her sister. Nothing unusual. No problems with other kids. Any incidents you haven't mentioned. Mr. Torres, I assure you, if there were any problems, you'd be the first to know. Emma and Sophie are delightful students. Maybe they're just going through a developmental phase. Children this age often have periods where they turn inward. It's completely normal." Normal. Everyone kept using that word. The therapist, the teacher, the parenting articles he'd started reading at 2 in the morning when sleep wouldn't come. But nothing about his daughters felt normal anymore. "Could I come in? Maybe observe the class for a day?" Another pause. This one longer. "We have strict policies about parent observations, Mr. Torres. We'd need to schedule something through the front office, get approval from the principal. It can take a few weeks." A few weeks. These things take time, but I promise you there's nothing to worry about. Emma and Sophie are thriving. Jake hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long time. His gut was screaming at him. Every instinct he'd developed in 42 years of life was telling him that teacher was lying, that something was very wrong, that his daughters needed him to figure it out. But what could he do? Storm into the school and demand answers, pull his girls out based on nothing but a father's paranoia? He decided to wait, to watch, to give it time. It was the worst decision he'd ever made. The third week broke him. Sophie stopped talking to anyone except Emma. Not a gradual reduction, a complete shutdown. She'd answer direct questions with nods or shakes of her head, but the chatterbox, who used to narrate her entire day to anyone who'd listen, had gone mute. Jake tried everything. Gentle questions, fun activities, ice cream bribes. Nothing worked. Sophie would look at him with eyes that held secrets she couldn't share, squeeze her sister's hand, and say nothing. Emma was worse. She'd started hitting herself. Not hard, not enough to leave marks, but the repetitive slapping of her palm against her thigh had returned. It was a stim she'd done when she was 3, before therapy taught her other ways to manage overwhelming emotions. The therapist had been so proud when Emma stopped, had called it a breakthrough. Now it was back, and Jake didn't know why. "Talk to me, baby," he begged one night, kneeling beside Emma's bed. Sophie was already asleep or pretending to be. Emma sat against her pillow, Bear clutched to her chest, palm slapping rhythmically against her leg. Whatever happened, whatever's wrong, Daddy will fix it. I promise. I just need to know what it is. Emma's eyes met his. For one moment he saw something in them. Terror. Pure crystallized terror. She opened her mouth like she might speak. Then she closed it. Shook her head. Looked away. Jake felt his heart crack down the middle. He called the school again the next morning. This time he demanded to speak with the principal. "Mr. Torres, I understand your concerns," Principal Davis said. She had the same professionally cheerful voice as Mrs. Bradley, like they'd all been trained at the same parent deflection seminar. "But Mrs. Bradley is one of our finest teachers. She's been with us for 8 years. I've personally observed her classroom multiple times, and I can assure you, my daughters have stopped talking. My autistic daughter is hurting herself again. Something is happening to them, and it's connected to school. I know it is." Mr. Torres' children often display different behaviors at home than at school. It's actually quite common for, "Don't tell me what's common. Tell me what's happening to my girls." A long silence. When Principal Davis spoke again, her voice had cooled several degrees. "I understand you're upset, but without any evidence of wrongdoing, without any specific complaints from your daughters, there's really nothing we can investigate. Perhaps family therapy might help. Sometimes children act out when there are issues at home." Jake hung up before he said something he'd regret. Issues at home. Like he was the problem. Like he was failing his daughters in some way that made them shut down. Maybe he was. Maybe he wasn't seeing something obvious. Maybe he was so desperate to find an external cause that he was missing something right in front of his face. He spent that night in his daughter's doorway watching them sleep. Emma had the bear. Sophie had her arm around Emma. Even in sleep, they held on to each other like the world was trying to tear them apart. The picture. Day announcement came home on Friday. Jake found it crumpled in the bottom of Sophie's backpack, which was unusual. Sophie was meticulous about her papers, always bringing home every worksheet and notice, smoothed flat and organized. This one had been shoved down deep hidden, almost. Picture day. Next Thursday. Dress your best parents. Welcome to visit. During photo sessions. Jake smoothed out the paper and read it 3 times. Then he walked to the girls' room where they sat on the floor, not playing with any of the toys spread around them. "Hey, babies. I found this in your backpack. Picture day next Thursday. You want to wear something special?" Both girls looked up. For a moment, Jake saw panic flash across Sophie's face. Real, genuine panic. "We don't want to go," Sophie said. It was the most words she'd spoken in days. "To picture day, why not? Just don't want to." "But you love getting your picture taken. Remember last year you picked out those matching yellow dresses and—" "We don't want to go, Daddy." Sophie's voice cracked. Tears welled in her eyes. "Please don't make us go." Emma started hitting her thigh. Faster than before. Harder. Jake dropped to his knees in front of them. Hey, it's okay. Nobody's making you do anything. But sweethearts, please, tell me what's wrong. Why don't you want to go?" Sophie looked at Emma. Something passed between them. That twin communication Jake had never been able to decode. "We can't tell you," Sophie whispered. "Why not?" She said. Sophie stopped, clamped her lips together, shook her head violently. Jake's blood went cold. Who said what, Sophie?" But the window had closed. Sophie pulled Emma closer, both girls shutting down in front of him, retreating behind walls he couldn't breach. "She said we'd get in trouble," Sophie finally whispered. "She said nobody would believe us. She said if we told something bad would happen." Who said that?" Silence. the endless, terrible silence that had swallowed his daughter's whole. Jake didn't sleep that night. He sat in the living room staring at the picture day notice, turning the words over in his mind. She said we'd get in trouble. She said nobody would believe us. She said if we told something bad would happen. She, the teacher, Mrs. Bradley, with her professional cheerfulness and her assurances that everything was fine. By 3 a.m, Jake had made a decision. He was going to that school on picture day, not during the scheduled parent visiting hours, not announced, not scheduled, not giving anyone time to prepare or hide or put on their best performance. He was going to walk in unannounced and see exactly what happened when no one knew he was watching. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of sunshine that felt like a cruel joke, bright and warm and full of promise that Jake knew was about to be broken. Maria came at 7. Jake had already told her the plan, not all of it, not the part about showing up unannounced, but enough. She was to dress the girls in something beautiful, something that would make them feel good about themselves, something that might bring back a fraction of the joy that had been stolen from them. I bought them something, Jake said, pulling 2 dresses from his closet. Pink and white, covered in tiny flowers with sashes that tied in the back. They looked like something from a fairy tale. They looked like what little girls should wear on picture day. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Mijo, these are beautiful. They deserve beautiful. After whatever they've been through, they deserve to feel like princesses. He carried the dresses to the girls' room. Emma and Sophie sat on Sophie's bed, already awake, the bear between them like a fortress wall. Hey, babies, look what Daddy got for picture day. He held up the dresses. For a moment, one precious moment, he saw something spark in their eyes. Something like hope. Something like the little girls they used to be. They're so pretty, Sophie breathed. Emma reached out and touched the pink fabric. Her fingers traced the flowers gently, reverently. She looked up at her father, and for the first time in 3 weeks, she smiled. It was small. It was fragile. But it was real. Jake felt his throat tighten. You like them? Both girls nodded. Maria's going to help you get dressed. I have to go to work early, but I'll see you later. Okay, he almost told them. Almost said he'd be at the school watching, making sure everything was okay. But something held him back. Some instinct that said the element of surprise was too important to waste. I love you both so much, he said instead. More than anything in this whole world. You know that, right? We know, Daddy, Sophie said. Emma made a sound. Not words, but close. A hum that meant agreement. That meant love. Jake hugged them both, memorizing the feel of their small bodies against his chest, the smell of their shampoo, the rhythm of their breathing. He didn't know why it felt like goodbye. He didn't know why his gut was churning with dread. He just knew that everything was about to change. Maria dressed them with ceremony. First the tights, white and soft against their small legs. Then the dresses, each one, sliding over their heads like a blessing. Maria buttoned the backs slowly, carefully, treating each tiny button like something precious. Look at you, she said, stepping back. The most beautiful girls in the whole world. Sophie twirled. Actually twirled for the first time in weeks. The skirt flared out around her, and she laughed a real laugh, surprised out of her by a moment of simple joy. Emma didn't twirl, but she looked down at her dress with something like wonder. She touched the sash, touched the flowers, looked at her reflection in the mirror, and didn't flinch away. Bear can't come to school today, Maria said gently. But he'll be here when you get home. Emma's face crumpled. "Hey, hey." Maria knelt down. "He'll be right here on your bed waiting, and you'll have your sister. Sophie will stay with you the whole time. Right, Sophie? Right." Sophie took Emma's hand. "I won't leave you, Emmy. I promise." Emma looked at her twin. Whatever passed between them seemed to be enough. She nodded, released the bear into Maria's hands, and walked toward the front door with Sophie. At the car, Jake's pickup truck that Maria used for school runs, the girls paused. "Maybe we don't have to go," Sophie said quietly. "Maybe we could stay home. Be sick. Miha, your picture day. Your pretty dresses. Your daddy wanted you to have a good day today." Sophie's jaw tightened. She looked at Emma, squeezed her hand, and squared her small shoulders like a soldier preparing for battle. "Okay," she said. "We'll go." They climbed into their car seats. Maria buckled them in, making sure the dresses didn't wrinkle. Through the window she could see their faces, scared, determined, holding on to each other. She almost called Jake. Almost said, "Something's wrong, don't make them go, something is very wrong with this picture." But Maria had raised 5 children. She'd seen dozens of school anxieties come and go. She told herself it was normal nervousness. Picture day jitters. First-grade fears that would dissolve the moment they walked through the classroom door. She was wrong. Jake arrived at Sunrise Elementary at 9:47 a.m. The parking lot was scattered with minivans and sedans, parents coming to watch their children's pictures being taken. Jake pulled his truck into a spot near the back, killed the engine, and sat for a moment in the silence. His hands were shaking. He'd told his crew at the shop that he had a family emergency. Didn't explain. Didn't need to. When you ride with brothers who understand that family is everything, you don't have to justify putting your children first. The front office waved him through without question. Picture day meant parent visitors were expected. He signed the clipboard, took a visitor's badge, and walked toward the first-grade wing. His boots echoed on the linoleum. The hall smelled like crayons and cleaning supplies, and the particular sweetness of childhood. Construction paper decorations covered the walls. Happy suns, happy trees, happy children drawn in happy colors. Room 107, Mrs. Bradley's classroom. The door was open. Jake stepped into the doorway, and his heart stopped beating. Both his daughters stood at the front of the classroom. They weren't wearing their dresses. They were wearing clown costumes, matching clown costumes, oversized rainbow-striped jumpsuits that swallowed their small frames, ruffly collars around their necks, gigantic shoes on their feet, and their faces. Oh God, their faces. White foundation caked on thick and uneven. Exaggerated red smiles painted far past their lips. Blue diamonds around their eyes already smeared and running with tears. Emma was shaking. The full-body tremor of a child whose nervous system had completely overwhelmed. Her hands were empty, no bear, nothing to hold on to, and they hung at her sides, fingers twitching, palm hitting her thigh in that terrible repetitive rhythm. Sophie stood slightly in front of her sister. Even now, even in this nightmare, she was trying to protect Emma. But tears poured down her painted face, cutting rivers through the white makeup, and her whole body vibrated with suppressed sobs. Mrs. Bradley stood 3 feet away from them, pointing at Emma, her face twisted with irritation. "Stand still," she snapped. "You're ruining the shot. Stop moving your hands like that. It's weird." Emma whimpered. The sound was barely human. Sophie grabbed her sister's hand. "Leave her alone. You're scaring her." "Quiet, Sophie. I didn't ask for your input." Mrs. Bradley turned back to her desk, where a phone sat propped against a stack of textbooks. She adjusted its angle, checked the screen. The red recording light glowed like an evil eye. She was filming this. Jake's vision went red at the edges. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to charge across that room, to grab his daughters, to put himself between them and this monster who had stolen their dresses and their dignity and their sense of safety in the world. But then he saw the other children. 23 first graders sat at their desks, dressed normally. Normal clothes, normal faces, watching Emma and Sophie stand alone in their humiliation. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked confused. A few, God help them, looked amused. One little boy in the front row was crying. Two parents stood near the back wall, their faces a mixture of discomfort and cowardice. They'd watched this happen. They'd done nothing. Jake's brain started working again. Cold. Clinical. The rage was still there, but it had crystallized into something sharper. Evidence. That phone had evidence. That phone had been recording. That phone would show exactly what this teacher had done in her own hand, undeniable and damning. If he charged in now, if he made a scene, she'd delete it. She'd claim it was a misunderstanding. It would be his word against hers. But if he was smart, if he was patient, if he played this exactly right, she'd destroy herself. Jake took one step backward into the hallway. Neither Mrs. Bradley nor the children had noticed him. He'd been visible for maybe 5 seconds. Long enough to see everything. Not long enough for anyone to register his presence. His hand was already pulling out his phone. He scrolled to a name he'd hoped he'd never need in a situation like this. Reaper. The call connected on the second ring. Jake, what's wrong? No greeting, no small talk. After 15 years of riding together, Reaper could read a phone call like a book. I need everyone. Sunrise Elementary School. Right now. How bad? Jake's voice dropped to a whisper, controlled and deadly. She hurt my daughters. Both of them. And she filmed it. 3 seconds of silence. We're rolling. 20 minutes. The line went dead. Jake made 2 more calls. Same message, same response. Within 20 minutes, every member of the Iron Wolves MC within a 50-mile radius would be converging on this school. Not for violence. Jake's crew didn't work that way. For witness, for presence. For the kind of overwhelming force that turns a teacher's word against a parent into a teacher's word against 200 men who weren't going anywhere until truth came to light. He slipped his phone back into his pocket and stepped into the classroom. Every head turned toward him. Mrs. Bradley's expression flickered. Surprise, then annoyance, then a mask of professional pleasantness sliding into place. Oh, Mr. Torres, we weren't expecting parents until... Jake didn't look at her. His eyes were locked on his daughters. Emma had stopped hitting her thigh. She was staring at him with an expression of desperate hope, her whole body straining toward him like he was oxygen and she was drowning. Sophie's face crumpled. Daddy. The word came out broken, shattered, carrying 3 weeks of silence and terror and the relief of finally being seen. Jake walked across that classroom like every step was a declaration of war. He didn't hurry, didn't run, just moved with the controlled purpose of a man who knew exactly what he was going to do and exactly how he was going to do it. He reached his daughters and dropped to his knees. I'm here, he said quietly. Daddy's here. I see you. I believe you. Emma made a sound. Not a word. A release. Like something that had been locked inside her for 3 weeks, finally broke free. She threw herself against his chest, her small arms wrapping around his neck, her body shaking with sobs she'd been too afraid to let out. Sophie crashed into him from the other side. "She made us wear them, Daddy. She said we had to. She said our dresses were boring. She said, I know, baby, I know." Mrs. Bradley's voice cut through, sharp, defensive. "Mr. Torres, there seems to be some misunderstanding. The girls wanted to be creative. They asked to wear the clown costumes. I was just trying to let them express, no." Sophie's scream echoed off the walls. "You're lying. We didn't want to. You took our dresses. You said they were ugly. You said we had to be clowns because we're the weird twins." Silence crashed through the room. Jake looked up at Mrs. Bradley over his daughters' heads. His eyes were empty of everything except a promise of what was coming. "The phone," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. The phone on your desk, the one that's been recording this whole time. What's on it?" Mrs. Bradley's face went pale. "That's my personal property." "That's evidence." Jake stood slowly, keeping both daughters pressed against his legs. "Evidence of what you've been doing to my children. Evidence of why they've been terrified to come to school. Evidence of why my autistic daughter started hurting herself again after months of progress." "I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. And in about 18 minutes, 200 of my brothers are going to park in your lot and we're all going to watch that video together. Every second of it." The color drained from Mrs. Bradley's face completely. You can't just... There are rules about recording children without parental consent, too. There are rules about stripping kids out of their clothes and forcing them into costumes that humiliate them. There are rules about targeting autistic children. There are rules about making them cry while you film it. Jake's voice never rose, never wavered. Every word landed like a hammer. "But you didn't worry much about rules, did you? Mrs. Bradley, you only worried about getting enough content for whatever sick audience you were planning to share this with." "I wasn't going to. I would never. The phone will show exactly what you were going to do. And when my brothers get here, when the police get here, when the news crews get here, because trust me, they're coming, everyone is going to see exactly what kind of teacher Sunrise Elementary hired." Mrs. Bradley's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. The other parents near the back wall shifted uncomfortably. One of them took out her phone, started recording. Good. The more evidence, the better. Jake looked down at his daughters. Emma's face was buried against his leg. Sophie was staring at Mrs. Bradley with an expression of fierce, righteous anger. "You're a bad person," Sophie said clearly. "And now everyone's going to know." From somewhere in the distance, a sound began to build. Low at first, a rumble on the edge of perception, then louder, fuller. The unmistakable symphony of motorcycle engines, dozens of them, getting closer. Mrs. Bradley's head snapped toward the windows. Jake smiled, and there was nothing friendly in it. "That would be my family," he said. "They're here because I called them. They're here because someone hurt my daughters. And my family doesn't let that slide." The windows were starting to rattle. The first wave of the Iron Wolves was about to arrive. And this teacher had no idea what was about to happen to her carefully constructed world. The rumble grew into a roar that shook the building to its foundation. Mrs. Bradley's hands trembled as she backed away from the windows. Her carefully maintained composure cracked, then shattered completely as the first wave of motorcycles appeared in the parking lot. This is completely inappropriate," she stammered. "You can't just bring a gang to a school. There are children here." Jake didn't move from his position, both daughters still pressed against him. "They're not a gang. They're a motorcycle club. My family. And they're here because my children needed protection that this school failed to provide." Sophie looked up at her father. "Are they the wolves, Daddy? Your wolf brothers?" "Yeah, baby. They're the wolves." Emma lifted her head from Jake's chest. Her face was still streaked with makeup and tears, but something had changed in her eyes. The terror was still there, but underneath it, a flicker of something else. Safety. The understanding that the nightmare might finally be ending. Through the windows, the sight was overwhelming. Row after row of motorcycles filled the parking lot in perfect formation. Chrome gleaming in the morning sun, engines dying one by one in synchronized sequence, 200 men dismounting as a single unit, their boots hitting pavement in a rhythm that sounded like an army arriving. Principal Davis burst into the classroom, her face flushed with panic. "Mr. Torres, what is the meaning of this? I've called the police. You can't just—" "Good," Jake interrupted calmly. "Call them. We'll need them to take the evidence into custody." "Evidence? What evidence?" Jake pointed at the phone still propped on Mrs. Bradley's desk. "That phone has been recording since before I got here, maybe longer. It's going to show exactly what your teacher did to my daughters today, and I'm guessing it'll show what she's been doing for weeks." Principal Davis's eyes darted to Mrs. Bradley. "Patricia, what is he talking about?" Mrs. Bradley's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her face had gone gray, the color of someone watching their entire life collapse in real time. "She made us wear clown costumes," Sophie said, her voice clear and strong now that her father was there. "She took off our pretty dresses and made us wear these ugly things. She painted our faces. She said we had to because we're the weird twins and nobody likes weird twins." "That's not, I didn't say." Mrs. Bradley's denial died in her throat. "She recorded it," Sophie continued. "She always records us. She said it was for school stuff, but she laughed when we cried. She said crying makes better videos." Principal Davis's face went white. "Patricia, tell me this isn't true." Silence. The sound of boots in the hallway grew louder. The first bikers had entered the building. Reaper appeared in the doorway first. He was 6'3", 240 pounds, with a silver beard braided to the middle of his chest and arms covered in tattoos that told stories of 30 years on the road. His leather vest bore the Iron Wolves insignia, a snarling wolf's head over crossed pistons. Behind him, the hallway filled with men. Leather and denim and weathered faces that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. They didn't push or shove. They simply stood a wall of silent witness that blocked any possibility of escape or denial. Reaper's eyes found Jake, then moved to the two small girls in clown costumes clutching their father's legs. Something shifted in his expression. Something dangerous and cold. "Brother," he said quietly, "you need to tell me what happened here." Jake's jaw tightened. "That woman stripped my daughters out of their picture day dresses and forced them into those costumes. She painted their faces while they cried. She's been recording it, recording all of it." Reaper looked at Mrs. Bradley. His gaze held no heat, no obvious anger. It was worse than that. It was the look of a man measuring exactly how much damage needed to be done. "That true, ma'am?" Mrs. Bradley found her voice. "This is ridiculous. I'm being harassed. I want all of you out of this school immediately. Principal Davis, call the police. Tell them there's a gang threatening." "Already called them," Principal Davis said faintly. "They're on their way." "Good." Reaper crossed his arms over his massive chest. "We'll wait. We're real good at waiting." More brothers filed in behind him. Bear, whose road name matched his massive frame, but contradicted his gentle nature. Tank, who ran a children's charity in his spare time. Diesel, who'd cried like a baby at his daughter's wedding last spring. Hammer, who coached Little League on weekends. These were the men society called dangerous. These were the men who'd dropped everything: jobs, appointments, obligations, to answer a call from a brother whose children had been hurt. They lined the walls of the classroom silent, and still their presence transforming the room into something that felt like a courtroom. a place where truth would be demanded and lies would not survive. Emma watched them with wide eyes. She tugged on Jake's shirt and pointed at Reaper's vest. "Wolf," she whispered. It was the first word she'd spoken in days. Jake's heart cracked open. "Yeah, baby, that's a wolf. He's here to protect you." Reaper heard. His weathered face softened almost imperceptibly. He gave Emma a small nod. "That's right, little one. The wolves are here, and nobody hurts our pack." The police arrived 12 minutes later. Officers Martinez and Chen walked into a scene that stopped them cold. 200 bikers filling a first-grade classroom and the surrounding hallways. A teacher backed against the whiteboard, trembling. A principal who looked like she might faint. And a father on his knees holding 2 little girls in clown costumes who couldn't stop crying. "Someone want to tell me what's going on here?" Officer Martinez's hand rested near his belt, but his voice was more confused than confrontational. Jake stood slowly, keeping Sophie's hand in his. Emma had attached herself to his leg and showed no signs of letting go. "My name is Jake Torres. These are my daughters Emma and Sophie. They're 6 years old. Emma is autistic. This morning, their teacher," he pointed at Mrs. Bradley, "took off the dresses they came to school wearing and forced them into these clown costumes. She painted their faces. She recorded the entire thing. She's been doing this for weeks, recording my daughters without my consent, humiliating them, using my autistic daughter's distress for content." Officer Martinez's expression hardened. "That's a serious accusation. The evidence is on that phone." Jake pointed at the desk. "She was still recording when I walked in. It'll show everything." Officer Chen moved toward the desk. Mrs. Bradley lunged forward. "Don't touch that. It's my personal property. You need a warrant." "Ma'am, if that phone contains evidence of child abuse, we don't need a warrant. We need to secure it before it gets destroyed." Chen picked up the phone carefully, like evidence at a crime scene, because that's exactly what it was. "How long has this been recording?" Chen asked, looking at the screen. Mrs. Bradley said nothing. "Over 3 hours," Chen said quietly. "It's been recording for over 3 hours." The silence that followed was deafening. Officer Martinez took Jake aside while Chen began watching the footage on the phone. "Mr. Torres, I need you to walk me through exactly what you saw when you arrived." Jake kept his voice steady, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. "My daughters have been different for 3 weeks. Withdrawn. Scared. Emma stopped talking completely. Sophie stopped playing with other kids. They were terrified of school but wouldn't tell me why. And today, I came unannounced, didn't schedule a visit, didn't give anyone time to prepare. When I walked in, both my girls were standing at the front of the class in those clown costumes. Their faces were painted. Emma was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Sophie was crying. And that woman," Jake's voice cracked, "that woman was pointing at Emma and telling her to stop moving her hands because it was weird." Martinez wrote everything down. And the phone, it was propped on her desk recording. The angle was deliberate. The framing was intentional. She wasn't documenting a classroom activity. She was creating content. From across the room, Officer Chen made a sound, something between disgust and disbelief. "Martinez, you need to see this." Both officers huddled over the phone. Jake couldn't hear what they were watching, but he could see their faces. The shift from professional neutrality to barely controlled rage. "Jesus Christ," Martinez muttered. Chen looked up. His eyes found Mrs. Bradley, and there was nothing professional left in his expression. "Mrs. Bradley, I need you to step outside with me." "I haven't done anything wrong. This is all a misunderstanding. The girls wanted..." "Now, Mrs. Bradley." The teacher's face collapsed. All the pretense, all the professional pleasantness crumbled away to reveal something desperate and ugly underneath. You don't understand. I wasn't going to actually post it. It was just for fun. The algorithm loves this kind of content. Kids doing funny things. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. Sophie's voice cut through the room like a blade. You made Emma cry every day. You told her she was broken. You said her brain was wrong and that's why she couldn't talk right. You said nobody would ever love someone as weird as her. Every head in the room turned toward the 6-year-old girl in the ruined clown costume. You told us if we said anything you'd make it worse. You said you'd tell everyone Emma was crazy and they'd take her away from Daddy. You said... Sophie's voice broke. You said you'd split us up, that twins like us shouldn't be together because we make each other worse. Emma started to keen. A high, thin sound of pure anguish that seemed to come from somewhere deep in her soul. The sound of a child who'd been told she was unlovable, broken wrong. Jake dropped to his knees and gathered both girls against him. That's not true. None of that is true. Emma, look at me. Look at Daddy. Emma's eyes met his, terrified, questioning, desperate to believe. You are not broken. Your brain is not wrong. You are perfect exactly the way you are, and I love you more than anything in this entire world. Sophie loves you. Maria loves you. And you see all these men. He gestured at the bikers lining the walls. They're here because they love you too. Because you matter. Because hurting you is the worst thing anyone could ever do. Reaper's voice came from behind them. Rough, thick with something that might have been tears in any other man. That's right, little wolf. You're part of our pack now. And wolves protect their own. Mrs. Bradley was crying now, ugly sobs that held no dignity. I didn't mean I never thought it was just supposed to be funny. Funny. Jake rose to his feet, his voice dangerously quiet. You told my autistic daughter that her brain was wrong. You told her nobody would love her. You threatened to take her away from her family. You've been torturing both of them for 3 weeks and you thought it was funny. Mrs. Patricia Bradley. Officer Martinez stepped forward, handcuffs in hand. You're under arrest for child abuse, emotional abuse of minors, unlawful recording of minors, and exploitation of a child. You have the right to remain silent. The rest of the Miranda warning drowned in Mrs. Bradley's sobs. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists with a sound of finality. They led her out through a hallway lined with bikers. 200 men stood in absolute silence watching the teacher who'd tortured 2 little girls walk past them in handcuffs. No one spoke. No one moved. They simply bore witness. Their presence said everything words couldn't. We see what you did. We know what you are. And we will never forget. Mrs. Bradley kept her head down, shoulders shaking with sobs. Whatever dreams she'd had about viral content and social media fame had died in that classroom. Her career was over. Her freedom was about to be severely limited. And her name would be attached to this day forever. Principal Davis followed the officers out, her face a mask of institutional shock. She'd have to answer questions. Hard questions about oversight and warning signs, and how a teacher could do this for weeks without anyone noticing. But that was for later. Right now, there were 2 little girls who needed something more important than answers. They needed restoration. The classroom emptied slowly. The other students were led away by hastily summoned parents, their confused faces full of questions that would be answered carefully over kitchen tables that evening. The cowardly parents who'd stood by and watched fled without meeting Jake's eyes. Soon only Jake, his daughters, and the wolves remained. Reaper walked forward, his heavy boots somehow gentle on the tile floor. He stopped a few feet from Emma, then slowly, carefully lowered himself to one knee. At his full height, he towered over the 6-year-old. On his knees, they were almost eye to eye. "Hey there, little one," he said, his gravelly voice soft as cotton. "That costume doesn't look very comfortable." Emma stared at him. Her hand crept toward his vest fingers, reaching for the wolf patch. Reaper didn't move, didn't flinch. Let her touch the insignia that marked him as something most people feared. "Wolf," Emma whispered again. "That's right. I'm a wolf. And you know what wolves do?" Emma shook her head. "Wolves take care of their pack. They protect the little ones. They make sure nobody gets hurt." Reaper's eyes glistened. "And you, little one, your pack now. You and your sister both." Sophie stepped closer. "Really? We're wolves too. The littlest, fiercest wolves we've ever had." Bear appeared beside Reaper, holding something white draped over his massive arm. Jake recognized them instantly, the pink and white dresses the girls had worn that morning. The dresses that represented everything Mrs. Bradley had tried to steal. "Found these shoved in the back of her closet," Bear said. "Figured these little ladies might want them back." Emma's eyes went wide. She reached for the dress, then pulled back, uncertain. "It's yours, baby," Jake said softly. "It was always yours. She had no right to take it." Reaper held out his hand to Emma. "What do you say, little wolf, ready to get out of that clown suit and back into something that actually fits you?" Emma looked at his hand, at his face, at the wolf on his vest. And then she did something she hadn't done with any stranger in months. She took his hand. They transformed her with ceremony. Reaper worked slowly, carefully, treating Emma like she was made of glass and gold. The ruffled collar came off first, revealing the pink shirt Maria had dressed her in that morning. Then the horrible oversized pants, showing the white shorts underneath. Bear produced wet wipes from somewhere in his vest, the kind bikers carried for road dust and engine grease. Reaper used them to clean Emma's face, wiping away the garish makeup with strokes so gentle they barely touched her skin. "There's her real face," Reaper murmured as the white foundation dissolved. "There she is." Sophie watched with fierce attention, ready to intervene if anyone made her sister uncomfortable. But Emma was calm, calmer than she'd been in weeks. Something about these big, rough men with their gentle hands had reached her in a way nothing else had. When Emma's face was clean, Reaper helped her into the dress. His scarred fingers fumbled with the tiny buttons, but he refused help. This mattered. This was important. This was restoration. The dress settled onto Emma's shoulders, and she looked down at herself with wonder, like she was seeing who she really was for the first time in weeks. "Sophie's turn," Reaper said, turning to the other twin. Sophie stood straight, chin up, tears still drying on her face. "I can do it myself." "I know you can, but you don't have to." Something cracked in Sophie's expression. The fierce protector who'd been trying to shield her sister for 3 weeks suddenly looked like what she actually was, a 6-year-old girl who needed someone to take care of her too. "Okay," she whispered. "You can help." Bear cleaned Sophie's face while Reaper removed the clown costume. Under it, Sophie wore the same pink shirt and white shorts as her sister. Maria had dressed them like matching dolls that morning, and somehow that small detail made everything feel more cruel, more deliberate, more wrong. The dress went on. The bow was tied. And Sophie stood beside her sister, both of them transformed back into the girls they'd been before Mrs. Bradley got her hands on them. Reaper sat back on his heels. "There. That's who you really are. Not what that woman tried to make you. This right here, these are the Torres twins. The little wolves." Emma smiled. Not a big smile. Not the carefree grin of a child who'd never been hurt. But a smile nonetheless. Real and precious and hard-won. She reached out and touched Reaper's vest again. This time she traced the letters underneath the wolf. Ron, wolves, she sounded out slowly. That's right, little one. Reaper's voice was thick. Iron wolves. And now you're one of us. Sophie took Emma's hand. The twins stood together in their matching dresses, surrounded by 200 bikers who'd dropped everything to come protect them. Thank you, Sophie said, looking at Reaper with eyes too old for her face. For believing us. Daddy believed us, but nobody else did. Until you came. Reaper shook his head. You don't thank family, little wolf. Family just shows up. That's what family does. Jake stood apart, watching his daughters be restored by men most people crossed the street to avoid. His eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. Reaper caught his gaze over the girls' heads. We got him, brother, he said quietly. They're going to be okay. Jake nodded once. He couldn't speak. If he spoke, he'd break down completely, and his daughters needed him strong right now. Emma tugged on her father's hand. He knelt down to her level. Daddy, she said. The word was clear, deliberate. I love you. 3 words. The first full sentence she'd spoken in weeks. Jake pulled both daughters into his arms and held them like he'd never let go. I love you too, baby girl. Both of you. More than anything. The wolves stood silent around them, a wall of leather and loyalty bearing witness to a moment they'd remember for the rest of their lives. This was what they rode for. This was what the brotherhood meant. 2 little girls restored and protected, safe in their father's arms. Officer Chen returned 20 minutes later, his face grim. Mr. Torres, I need to tell you something about what we found on that phone. Jake stood, keeping both daughters' hands in his. How bad? Chen glanced at the girls, then back at Jake. Maybe we should talk privately. No, Sophie's voice was firm. We want to know. We lived it. We should know. Chen hesitated, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. The recording goes back several hours, but we found the phone's storage goes back weeks. She's been recording your daughters for almost a month. Over 60 separate videos. Jake's blood went cold. 60. Mostly in this classroom, but some in the hallway, the cafeteria, the playground. She was tracking them, targeting them specifically. There are videos of Emma having meltdowns that Mrs. Bradley clearly provoked. Videos of Sophie trying to protect her sister and getting punished for it. Videos of both girls crying, being humiliated, being isolated from other students. Reaper stepped forward. What was she doing with these videos? That's the worst part. Chen's jaw tightened. She has a private social media account with almost 50,000 followers. The content is... He stopped, swallowed. It's monetized videos of children in distress. She has a whole collection. Your daughters aren't the only ones, but they're the most recent, the most frequent. Jake felt his legs go weak. She was making money off my daughter's pain. It appears so. We've contacted the FBI. This crosses into federal territory. Child exploitation charges, potentially trafficking of child abuse material. She's not getting out of this. Ever. Sophie tugged on Jake's hand. Daddy, what does that mean? Jake knelt down. It means she's going to prison, baby. For a very, very long time. And she's never, ever going to hurt another child again. Promise. I promise. Emma leaned against her sister. Her eyes were clearer than they'd been in weeks, like a fog was finally lifting. Bad lady gone? She asked. Yes, baby. Bad lady gone. Forever. Emma nodded once, satisfied. Then she looked at Reaper. Wolves helped. Reaper's weathered face cracked into something that might have been a smile if he weren't trying so hard to hold back tears. Yeah, little one. Wolves helped, and wolves will always help, whenever you need us. The school day had effectively ended, though no official announcement had been made. Parents had rushed to collect their children after word spread about the arrest. News vans had appeared at the edge of the parking lot, kept at bay by a wall of motorcycles and the men who rode them. Jake carried Emma, while Sophie walked beside him, her hand wrapped around two of his fingers. They moved through the hallway toward the exit, surrounded by brothers who cleared a path without being asked. At the front doors, Maria waited. Her face was streaked with tears, her hands pressed against her heart. When she saw the girls in their dresses restored and safe, she broke down completely. Miss Niñas, oh Miss Niñas, I'm so sorry. I should have known. You couldn't have known, Jake said firmly. None of us knew. She was careful. She was deliberate. And she threatened them into silence. Maria opened her arms, and both girls fell into them. My brave, beautiful girls, Maria whispered. My little warriors. I'm so proud of you. So proud. Sophie looked up. We told Maria. We finally told. And people believed us. Of course they believed you. The truth always comes out, mija. Always. No matter how hard people try to hide it. The late morning sun fell warm on their faces as they stepped outside. The parking lot was chaos news crews, police cars, concerned parents, curious onlookers, but around Jake and his daughters there was a bubble of protection. Iron wolves formed a perimeter, not threatening, just present, making sure no camera got too close. No reporter shouted questions at two little girls who'd already been through enough. Reaper walked beside Jake. What do you need, brother? What comes next? Jake looked at his daughters. Emma was falling asleep against his shoulder, exhausted by the emotional hurricane she'd survived. Sophie was holding Maria's hand, but her eyes kept drifting to the wolves around them, a small smile playing on her lips. I need to take them home, Jake said. I need to hold them and feed them and put them to bed in their own room where they're safe. I need to start figuring out how to help them heal from this. And after that, Jake's jaw tightened. After that, I'm going to make sure this never happens to another kid. Not here, not anywhere. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I'm going to fight until no teacher ever thinks they can do this and get away with it. Reaper nodded slowly. Then you won't be fighting alone. The wolves ride with you. Today, tomorrow, as long as it takes. He extended his hand. Jake took it. It wasn't just a handshake. It was a promise. A commitment. The Brotherhood's words sealed in the parking lot of an elementary school, where two little girls had been saved from a monster hiding in plain sight. Iron wolves, Reaper said. Iron wolves, Jake answered. Behind them, 200 voices echoed the words. And somewhere in the back seat of a police car, Patricia Bradley heard the sound and understood that her life as she knew it was over. The wolves had come. And they weren't leaving until justice was complete. The ride home felt like crossing from one world into another. Emma slept against Jake's chest the entire drive, her small body finally releasing the tension it had carried for 3 weeks. Sophie sat beside Maria in the back seat, her hand resting on her sister's ankle, unwilling to break physical contact even now. She's really going to jail, Daddy? Sophie asked quietly. Jake met her eyes in the rearview mirror. Yes, baby, she's really going to jail. For how long? A very long time, maybe forever. Sophie nodded slowly. Good. There was no childish cruelty in her voice, just the exhausted relief of someone who'd been trapped in a nightmare and finally woke up. Jake understood that feeling. He'd felt it himself watching the handcuffs close around Patricia Bradley's wrists. Maria wiped her eyes for the 100th time. I keep thinking about the signs I missed. The way Emma stopped eating breakfast. The way Sophie always checked the windows before we left for school, like she was afraid of something. You couldn't have known, Jake said. But I should have. I spend more time with them than anyone except you. I should have seen it. She threatened them, Maria. She told them if they said anything, she'd split them up. She told Emma nobody could love someone with a broken brain. She made them believe that silence was the only way to survive. Maria's face crumpled. What kind of monster says that to a child? Jake didn't have an answer. He didn't think anyone did. Home had never felt more sacred. Jake carried Emma through the front door, while Sophie held onto his belt loop, refusing to let go. The apartment was exactly as they'd left it that morning. Maria's coffee cup still in the sink. The girls' breakfast dishes on the drying rack, Emma's bear sitting on the couch where she'd left him. Sophie spotted the bear immediately. She grabbed it and pressed it into Emma's arms. Emma stirred, clutched the bear automatically, and sighed back into sleep. I'll make lunch, Maria said, moving toward the kitchen. The girls need to eat. Real food, not school cafeteria garbage. Jake laid Emma on the couch, tucking a blanket around her. Sophie immediately curled up beside her sister, one arm draped protectively over Emma's chest. You don't have to guard her anymore, Jake said softly. You're safe now. Sophie looked up at him with eyes too old for her 6 years. I know, but I want to. She's my sister. Jake knelt beside the couch and stroked Sophie's hair. You did such a brave thing today, speaking up like that, telling everyone what really happened. I was scared. I know you were. But you were there, and the wolves were there, and I thought... Sophie's voice wavered. I thought if I didn't say it, then I might never say it. And Emma couldn't say it. So I had to. Jake pulled her into a hug, careful not to wake Emma. I'm so proud of you, Sophie. So proud. You protected your sister when nobody else would. That makes you the bravest person I know. Sophie's small arms wrapped around his neck. Daddy. Yeah, baby. Can we never go back to that school ever? Never, I promise. The phone calls started an hour later. First came the school district's superintendent, a man named Dr. Harold Morrison, who spoke in the careful cadences of someone terrified of lawsuits. Mr. Torres, I want to personally assure you that Willowbrook School District takes these allegations extremely seriously. We're conducting a full investigation into Mrs. Bradley's conduct and reviewing our policies regarding your policies let a teacher torture my daughters for 3 weeks. Silence. Mr. Torres, I understand you're upset. Upset doesn't begin to cover it. My autistic daughter was told her brain was broken. My other daughter was threatened into silence. They were filmed crying, humiliated, exploited for content, and nobody at your school noticed. Nobody stopped it. Nobody protected them. Morrison's voice tightened. We're implementing immediate changes, enhanced supervision, new protocols for recording devices in classrooms, mandatory training on. Training won't fix what happened to my girls. Training won't undo the damage that woman did. You want to know what will help accountability? Real accountability. Not administrative shuffling and policy reviews. I want answers about how she was hired, how she passed background checks, how she operated for God knows how long without anyone raising a flag. I assure you we're looking into all of that. Good. Because if I find out anyone knew what she was doing and looked the other way, I'm coming after them too. Every single one of them. Jake hung up before Morrison could respond. The next call came from a number he didn't recognize. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Mr. Torres. This is Detective Sarah Chen with the FBI's Crimes Against Children Unit. I've been assigned to your daughter's case. Jake straightened. FBI already. The local police flagged this case immediately. Mrs. Storm. Bradley's social media accounts show evidence of a much larger operation than just your daughter's. We've identified at least 15 other children who appear in her content spanning 3 different schools over the past 6 years. Jake's stomach dropped. 6 years? She's been doing this for 6 years? Possibly longer. Her accounts were private and carefully curated to avoid detection, but she made mistakes. We're working with tech companies to trace her digital footprint. Mr. Torres, I need to be honest with you. This is one of the worst cases of systematic child exploitation I've seen in my career. Jake closed his eyes. What do you need from me? Right now, just take care of your daughters. We'll need formal interviews eventually, but that can wait until they're ready. I'd recommend finding a child psychologist who specializes in trauma. The district should be covering those costs. They will be, whether they want to or not. Detective Chen's voice warmed slightly. I've seen the footage from this morning. What you did showing up unannounced, calling your support system, making sure everything was documented. You may have saved not just your daughters, but every other child she would have victimized in the future. I just wanted to protect my girls. You did, and because of that, we can protect others. Emma woke screaming at 3 in the afternoon. The sound tore through the apartment like a knife. Jake was in the kitchen with Maria, discussing whether the girls could handle solid food, when Emma's voice shattered the quiet. He was at her side in seconds. Sophie was already there, her small hands on Emma's shoulders, her voice high and scared. Emmy, wake up! You're home! You're safe! Wake up! Emma's eyes were open but unseeing, locked in whatever nightmare had followed her out of sleep. Her hands flailed wildly, hitting the couch cushions, hitting the bear, hitting Sophie's arms. Jake knelt beside them. Emma, look at me. Look at Daddy. She couldn't hear him, couldn't see him. She was somewhere else. Somewhere dark and terrible, trapped in a memory that wouldn't let her go. Don't touch me, she screamed. Don't put it on, I don't want to. Please, please, don't make me. Jake's heart shattered into a million pieces. I'm not going to touch you, baby. I'm just here. Daddy's just here. You're home. You're safe. Nobody's going to make you do anything. Maria appeared with a cold washcloth. For her forehead. It sometimes helps with night terrors. Jake pressed the cloth gently against Emma's forehead. The cold seemed to reach her. Her flailing slowed. Her eyes began to focus. Daddy, I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Emma's face crumpled. She threw herself against his chest and sobbed. Not the silent, suppressed crying she'd been doing for weeks. Real sobs. Loud and messy and full of everything she'd been holding inside. She said I was broken. She said my brain was wrong. She said she was lying. Jake's voice was fierce. Every word she said was a lie. You are not broken. Your brain is not wrong. You are perfect. You hear me, perfect. Sophie pressed against Emma's other side, creating a wall of protection around her twin. I told her that. I told her Emma was perfect and she was the broken one. That's when she got really mad. That's when she started making the videos more. Jake looked at his older daughter, older by 3 minutes, but she'd carried the weight of protecting her sister like it was years. What did she do when she got mad, Sophie? She made us stand in front of everyone. She asked Emma questions she knew Emma couldn't answer. Then she'd laugh when Emma couldn't talk. The other kids laughed too because they thought it was okay. Because the teacher was laughing. I tried to talk, Emma whimpered. I tried. The words were stuck. I know, baby, I know. That's not your fault. That's how your brain works, and there's nothing wrong with that. She was the one who was wrong. She was the one who was broken. Emma pulled back slightly, her tear-streaked face searching her father's. Do you really think I'm perfect? Jake cupped her face in his hands. I think you're the most perfect person I've ever known. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that. For the first time since March, Emma smiled. A real smile. Small and fragile, but real. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby girl. Forever and always, handsome. The FBI interview came 3 days later. Detective Chen arrived at the apartment with a child psychologist named Dr. Amanda Pierce, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a gentle voice. They'd insisted on conducting the interviews at home in a familiar environment where the girls would feel safe. We're going to take this very slow, Dr. Pierce explained to Jake while the girls played in their room with Maria. Emma and Sophie have been through significant trauma. Pushing too hard could cause them to shut down again. What do you need from them? Just their truth, in their own words at their own pace. We're not looking for perfect testimony. We're looking for consistent patterns that corroborate what we've already seen in the video evidence. Detective Chen nodded. The phone footage is damning on its own. Mrs. Bradley essentially documented her own crimes. But the girls' accounts will help us understand the full scope of what happened and potentially identify other victims. Other victims. We've found evidence that she did this at 2 previous schools, but those incidents were never reported. The children were younger, non-verbal in some cases, or simply too scared to talk. The parents never knew what was happening. Jake felt sick. How did she keep getting hired? She moved between districts, changed her last name once after a divorce. Her references were carefully curated principals who never observed her classroom colleagues who only saw her public face. She was careful, methodical. She knew exactly how to hide. Until she didn't. Until your daughters. Until you. Chung. Sophie went first. She sat on the couch with Dr. Pierce while Detective Chen observed from a chair in the corner. Jake wanted to be in the room, but Dr. Pierce gently suggested he wait nearby. Sometimes children shared more freely without parents present. He stood in the hallway, close enough to hear far enough to not interfere. Sophie, can you tell me about the first time Mrs. Bradley changed something about your day? Sophie's voice was clear, steady. She'd been waiting to tell this story. It was the second week of school. Emma was having a hard day. The classroom was too loud and she put her hands over her ears. Mrs. Bradley told her to stop being dramatic. What happened then? I told Mrs. Bradley that Emma has autism, and loud noises hurt her. Mrs. Bradley laughed. She said autism was just an excuse for bad behavior. She said if Emma wanted to act normal, she could act normal. She just chose not to. How did that make you feel? Mad. Really, really mad. But also scared. Because she was the teacher. Teachers are supposed to be nice. Teachers are supposed to help. What happened next? She started watching us. Like really watching. Every time Emma did something different, flapping her hands, humming, not looking at people, Mrs. Bradley would write it down. I didn't know what she was writing then. I know now. What was she writing? Ideas for videos. She told us later. She said kids like Emma were perfect for content because they did weird things, and people loved watching weird things. Jake's hands curled into fists against his thighs. When did the recording start? A few weeks in. She started keeping her phone on her desk. She said it was for taking pictures of our work. But it was always pointed at Emma. At me too when I tried to help Emma. Did she ever record you at home or outside of school? No, just in the classroom, and sometimes in the hallway. And one time in the bathroom. Jake's blood turned to ice. The bathroom! Dr. Pierce's voice remained calm. Sophie, can you tell me about that? Emma had an accident. She was overwhelmed and she couldn't hold it. Mrs. Bradley followed us to the bathroom. She stood outside the door and recorded Emma crying. She said it was to document the incident. But she was laughing. I could hear her laughing. What did you do? I told her to stop. I said I was going to tell my daddy. That's when she got really mad. She grabbed my arm hard, and she said if I told anyone she'd make sure Emma got taken away. She said there were places for broken kids, special places where they took kids whose brains didn't work right. She said she'd send Emma there if I didn't keep my mouth shut. Jake closed his eyes. Tears burned behind his lids. Did you believe her? Yes. Sophie's voice cracked. I believed her. She was a teacher. Teachers know things. I thought if I just stayed quiet, if I just protected Emma, it would stop. But it didn't stop. It got worse. How did it get worse? The costumes. She started making Emma wear things. Silly hats, funny glasses. One time a sign that said, "I'm special," with a frown face on it. The other kids laughed. Mrs. Bradley always made sure they laughed, and she always made sure the phone was recording. And the clown costume? Sophie's breathing changed. Faster. Shallower. That was the worst. She'd been planning it for weeks. She told us the day before. She said picture day was going to be special. She said she had the perfect costume for the weird twins. She said this video was going to make her famous. What did you do that night? I couldn't sleep. I held Emma all night. I told her it would be okay. I told her Daddy would come. I didn't know if he would, but I told her anyway. And he did come. He came. Sophie's voice broke completely. He really came. And he brought the wolves. Emma's interview was different. She sat in Dr. Pierce's lap, clutching her bear, speaking in fragments and half-sentences that the psychologist patiently pieced together. Sometimes Emma used gestures when words failed. Sometimes she just pointed or nodded or shook her head. Did Mrs. Bradley ever tell you things about yourself, Emma? Emma nodded. Can you tell me what she said? Silence. Then quietly, she said I was broken. She said my brain didn't work. She said nobody would ever love me because I was too weird. She said Daddy only kept me because he had to. Jake pressed his hand against the wall to keep from collapsing. Do you believe those things? Emma looked up at Dr. Pierce. I used to. Before the wolves came. Before Daddy found me. And now I know she was lying. Daddy said I'm perfect. The wolfman said I'm Pack. Sophie says I'm her best friend. They can't all be wrong. Dr. Pierce smiled gently. They're not wrong, Emma. They're right. You're perfect. You are loved. And nothing Mrs. Bradley said was ever true. I know. Emma's voice was stronger now. She was the broken one, not me. The evidence mounted daily. Detective Chen called with updates every afternoon. More victims had been identified. More parents were coming forward. The FBI had traced Mrs. Bradley's online activity back 8 years, finding hundreds of videos of children being humiliated, exploited, reduced to content for strangers' entertainment. She made over $200,000, Chen told Jake on the phone, her voice tight with disgust. Ad revenue subscriptions to her private channels, direct payments from people who wanted specific content. She had a whole business built on hurting children. $200,000. That we can trace. There's likely more in accounts we haven't found yet. Jake sat heavily on his couch. All that money, all those years, and nobody noticed. People noticed. They just didn't say anything. Or they said something and weren't believed. Or the schools protected their reputation instead of investigating. This is how predators operate, Mr. Torres. They exploit systems built on trust. They use our assumption that teachers are safe. What happens to the money? It'll be seized, distributed among the victims as restitution once sentencing happens. Your daughters will receive a portion along with every other child she harmed. I don't want her money. I understand, but consider using it for their therapy, for their future. Turn something she used for evil into something that helps them heal. Jake thought about that, about taking the blood money and transforming it into something good. I'll think about it. Good. One more thing, the media has gotten wind of this. The story is going to break nationally tomorrow. I wanted you to be prepared. National news. This is big, Mr. Torres. A teacher systematically exploiting special needs children for profit over nearly a decade. Multiple school districts failing to protect students. A motorcycle club showing up to ensure justice. This story has everything. It's going to be everywhere. Jake closed his eyes. I don't want my daughters' faces on television. We've already made that clear to every outlet. The girls' identities are protected, but you should be prepared for reporters, for attention, for people wanting to talk to you about what happened. I didn't do this for attention. I know, but sometimes attention is how change happens. Sometimes a story getting told is the only way to make sure it never happens again. The news broke the next morning. Teacher arrested in massive child exploitation ring motorcycle club. Helps save twin girls from predator FBI. Investigates 8-year pattern of abuse. Jake turned off the television after 5 minutes. He didn't need to see it. He'd lived it. The phone rang constantly. Reporters, lawyers, advocacy organizations, parents whose children had been in Mrs. Bradley's previous classes, desperate to know if their kids had been victimized too. Maria fielded most of the calls while Jake focused on his daughters. They were better. Not healed, healing would take months, maybe years, but better. Emma was speaking in full sentences again. Sophie was actually playing, instead of standing guard over her sister. They'd both slept through the night without nightmares for the first time since everything started. Small victories. Precious victories. Reaper called in the afternoon. Saw the news, brother. How are the little wolves doing? They're surviving, getting better every day. Good. Listen, we had a meeting last night, the whole chapter. We want to do something. You've already done more than I could ever repay. This isn't about repayment. This is about making sure what happened to your girls doesn't happen to other kids. We want to start a program. Guardian Wolves, partners with schools, child advocacy groups, therapists. When a kid needs protection and the system fails them, we show up. We bear witness. We make sure truth comes to light. Jake felt something loosen in his chest. You'd do that? We're already doing it. Word spread about what happened at Sunrise Elementary. Chapters in 3 other states have reached out. They want in. This is bigger than us now, Jake. This is a movement. Because of my daughters. Because of your daughters. And because of you. You showed everyone what happens when someone refuses to accept that this is okay. You showed what community can do when it stands together. Jake looked at Emma and Sophie playing with blocks on the living room floor. Sophie was building a tower. Emma was carefully placing a wolf figurine at the top, a toy Reaper had sent over the day after the arrest. What do you need from me? Your story, your voice. Parents need to know what to look for. They need to know that trusting their instincts isn't paranoia, it's protection. They need to know that when systems fail, communities can step up. I'm not a public speaker. Neither am I. But some things are too important to stay silent about. Jake watched his daughters play. Watched the wolf figurine standing guard atop Sophie's tower. Okay, he said finally. I'll do it. Yeah, Yeah, for Emma and Sophie. For every kid out there whose parents are being told they're overreacting. For every child who's too scared to speak. Iron wolves, brother. Iron wolves. That night, Jake tucked his daughters into bed together. They'd asked to share Emma's bed, and he'd agreed without hesitation. Whatever they needed to feel safe, they would have. Whatever helped them heal, he would provide. Daddy. Sophie's voice was sleepy but content. Yeah, baby. Are we really wolves now? Jake smiled. The littlest, fiercest wolves in the whole pack. And wolves protect each other. Always. Emma stirred beside her sister. Daddy stays. I'll stay until you're asleep, and I'll be right in the next room all night. Always. Sophie reached out and took Emma's hand. Emma squeezed back. We're going to be okay, Sophie said. It wasn't a question. You're going to be more than okay, Jake promised. You're going to be amazing. He sat in the darkness, watching his daughters breathe, watching them finally relax into the kind of sleep that comes from feeling truly safe. The nightmares weren't over. The healing had only begun. But for the first time since this nightmare started, Jake believed that his daughters would not just survive. They would thrive. Because they were pack now, and wolves protect their own. 3 months passed before Patricia Bradley's trial began. 3 months of healing. 3 months of therapy sessions and sleepless nights and small victories that felt like mountains conquered. 3 months of Emma learning to trust again, and Sophie learning she didn't have to carry the weight of protection alone. Jake stood at the courthouse steps on a Tuesday morning in June, his daughter's hands in his 200 iron wolves at his back. You ready for this? Reaper asked quietly. Jake looked down at Emma and Sophie. Both girls wore matching blue dresses, their choice, their decision, and both stood with their chins raised and their shoulders squared. Daddy, Sophie said, we want to go in. Are you sure, baby, you don't have to? The prosecutor said your video testimony is enough. We want to, Emma said. Her voice was clear now, stronger than it had been 3 months ago. We want her to see us. We want her to know we're not scared anymore. Jake's throat tightened. Then we go in. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled with reporters, advocates, parents whose children had been identified as victims, and row after row of iron wolves in their leather vests. The judge had initially tried to limit the bikers' presence, but their lawyer, a woman named Rebecca Martinez, who'd taken the case pro bono, argued successfully that they were family members entitled to attend. Patricia Bradley sat at the defense table. She looked nothing like the teacher who'd terrorized Jake's daughters. Her hair hung limp and gray. Her face was hollow, aged 20 years in 3 months. Her hands trembled as they rested on the table in front of her. She didn't look up when Jake entered with the girls. She kept her eyes fixed on her hands, as if looking at her victims might shatter whatever remained of her composure. Sophie tugged Jake's sleeve. She looks sad. She should be sad. I don't feel bad for her, Sophie said firmly. She made Emmy cry every day. She made me lie to you. She doesn't get to be sad. Emma squeezed her father's hand. Bad choices make bad things happen. That's what Dr. Pierce says. Jake settled into the front row behind the prosecution, his daughters pressed close on either side. Maria sat beside Sophie, holding the little girl's other hand. Behind them, Reaper and the core members of the Iron Wolves filled the next 3 rows. A wall of leather and loyalty. A family that showed up. The prosecutor, a woman named Diane Foster, with silver hair and sharp eyes, turned to acknowledge them. She gave the girls a small smile and Jake a nod of respect. This was her case. Her crusade. She'd told Jake in their first meeting that she had a special needs grandson of her own, and that Patricia Bradley represented everything she'd spent her career fighting against. "All rise," the bailiff called. "The Honorable Judge Marcus Washington presiding." The judge took his seat, his expression grave. He was a tall black man in his 60s, a former prosecutor himself known for his zero tolerance of crimes against children. "Be seated. We're here today in the matter of the state versus Patricia Ann Bradley on charges of child abuse, exploitation of minors, unlawful recording of children, and trafficking of child abuse material. Ms. Bradley, how do you plead?" Patricia's lawyer, a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Jake felt Sophie stiffen beside him. "She's lying," Sophie whispered fiercely. "She did it. She knows she did it." "Shh, baby. That's how trials work. She has to plead. But the evidence will show the truth." Judge Washington gavelled for silence. "Prosecution, your opening statement." Diane Foster rose and approached the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is not about one bad day. It's not about a teacher who made a mistake. This case is about a predator who spent 8 years systematically identifying, targeting, and exploiting vulnerable children for profit. Patricia Bradley didn't just hurt Emma and Sophie Torres. She built a business on children's tears." Foster's voice was steady, controlled, devastating. "Over the course of this trial, you will see evidence that Ms. Bradley maintained private social media accounts with over 50,000 subscribers. You will see financial records showing over $200,000 in income generated from videos of children being humiliated, ridiculed, and emotionally abused. You will hear from experts who will explain the lasting psychological damage inflicted on her victims," where she paused, letting her words settle. "But most importantly, you will see the videos themselves, videos filmed by Ms. Bradley on her own phone, documenting her own crimes. Videos where she laughs at crying children. Videos where she discusses view counts, while a 6-year-old autistic girl sobs in the background. Videos where she strips 2 little girls of their picture day dresses and forces them into clown costumes designed to maximize their humiliation." Foster turned and looked directly at Patricia Bradley. "This defendant created content from children's pain. She monetized their suffering. She threatened them into silence and manipulated systems designed to protect them. The evidence will prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Patricia Bradley is guilty of every charge against her." She returned to her seat. The defense attorney stood slowly, clearly uncomfortable. "Ladies and gentlemen, my client maintains her innocence. While some of her choices may have been misguided, there is no evidence that she intended to cause harm. Ms. Bradley was an educator for over 20 years with no prior complaints. We ask that you keep an open mind and remember that the burden of proof lies with the prosecution." It was the weakest opening statement Jake had ever heard. Even the defense attorney didn't seem to believe it. The prosecution called their first witness Detective Sarah Chen. Chen took the stand in her FBI windbreaker, her testimony crisp and professional. She walked the jury through the investigation, the discovery of the social media accounts, the tracing of financial records, the identification of victims across 3 school districts. "Detective Chen, how many children have you identified as appearing in the defendant's videos?" 47 confirmed victims, ranging in age from 4 to 8 years old. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. And what was the nature of these videos? The content followed a consistent pattern. Ms. Bradley would identify children who were vulnerable, those with disabilities, behavioral challenges, or difficult home situations. She would then create situations designed to provoke emotional reactions. Crying, meltdowns, confusion. These reactions were recorded and posted to her private channels. Did the parents of these children consent to the recordings? Not a single parent we've interviewed was aware their child was being filmed. Ms. Bradley was extremely careful to hide her activities. How did she avoid detection for so long? Chen's jaw tightened. She moved between school districts. She targeted children who couldn't effectively communicate what was happening. She threatened children who might talk. And frankly, she exploited a system that assumes teachers are trustworthy and gives parents little visibility into what happens in classrooms. Foster nodded. No further questions. The defense cross-examination was brief and ineffective. What could they possibly ask? The evidence was overwhelming. The second day brought the videos. Diane Foster had warned Jake that this would be the hardest part. Seeing the evidence in a courtroom projected on a screen would be different from knowing it existed. "You can leave," she'd said. "The girls don't need to watch this. You don't need to watch this." But Jake stayed, and his daughters stayed beside him. "We already lived it," Sophie said when he gave them one more chance to leave. "Watching can't hurt more than that." The first video showed Emma on her second week of school. She was humming at her desk, a gentle sound of self-comfort. Patricia Bradley's voice cut in from off-camera. Emma, stop that noise. It's disturbing the other children." On screen, Emma's humming stuttered but continued. It was how she regulated, how she coped. The therapists had explained it dozens of times. "I said stop." Bradley walked into frame and slammed her hand on Emma's desk. Emma jumped, her humming cutting off abruptly. Her face crumpled. She began to rock, a stress response her body couldn't control. "Look at this," Bradley's voice said, clearly narrating for the camera. "Classic autism meltdown behavior. Watch how she can't control herself." In the courtroom, Emma pressed closer to Jake. Her breathing was steady, though. Her hand gripped his, but she didn't look away from the screen. "That's not a meltdown," she whispered. "That's being scared." "I know, baby, I know." The video continued. Bradley let Emma rock for 3 full minutes while the camera recorded. Then she turned to the class. "This is why some children need special help, class. They can't behave like normal children." Sophie's voice appeared in the video, clear and defiant. "She's not normal. She's my sister and she's perfect." "Sophie, that's enough. Go sit in the corner until you learn to respect your teacher." The video cut out. Another began immediately, and another, and another. 2 hours of footage carefully curated by the prosecution to show the pattern. The targeting, the escalation, the deliberate, systematic destruction of children's trust and self-worth. The jury watched in horror. One woman wept openly. A man in the back row looked like he might vomit. When the clown costume video finally played the video from Picture Day, the one that started it all, Sophie stood up. Jake reached for her, but she moved too fast. "That's enough," she said loudly. The courtroom went silent. The video paused on a frozen image of Emma sobbing in the clown costume, face paint smeared with tears. "Sophie," Jake said softly. "Sit down, baby." "No." Sophie's voice was strong. She turned to face the jury. "You don't need to see more. You can see she hurt us. You can see she laughed at us. You can see my sister crying and that lady filming it like it was funny." Judge Washington leaned forward. "Young lady, this is a courtroom. We have procedures. I know about procedures." Sophie's chin was up, her eyes fierce. "Procedures let her hurt us for 3 weeks. Procedures made Daddy have to show up without permission to find out the truth. Procedures protected her. The judge fell silent. She told Emma her brain was broken. She told me if I said anything, they'd take Emma away. She made us believe nobody would help. But Daddy helped. The wolves helped. And now you have to help too. You have to make sure she can't ever hurt another kid. Sophie turned and looked directly at Patricia Bradley for the first time. You're not a teacher. Teachers help kids. You just hurt them for money. And I hope you have to think about that every day for the rest of your life. She walked back to her seat and sat down beside Jake. The courtroom remained absolutely silent. Judge Washington cleared his throat. We'll take a 15-minute recess. During the break, Diane Foster approached Jake. That, she said quietly, was the most powerful testimony I've ever witnessed, and it wasn't even scheduled. I'm sorry, don't apologize. That little girl just won this case. Every juror was crying. Even the foreman and that man hasn't shown emotion since we started. Jake looked at Sophie, who was sitting with Maria, drinking water and eating the crackers Maria always kept in her purse. She's stronger than I ever knew. Kids who survive what she survived usually are. The ones who speak up, who refuse to let their voices be silenced, they become forces of nature. Foster smiled. She's going to change the world someday, Mr. Torres. I'd bet my career on it. Emma tugged on Jake's sleeve. Daddy, can I say something too? In court. You don't have to baby. I know, but Sophie talked. I want to talk too. Jake looked at Foster. She nodded slowly. I'll request permission from the judge. Given Sophie's statement, he might allow it. Judge Washington did allow it. Emma took the witness stand with her bear in her lap. She'd asked specifically if she could bring him, and no one had the heart to refuse. Foster approached gently. Emma, do you know why you're here today? To tell the truth about what Mrs. Bradley did. That's right. Can you tell us in your own words how Mrs. Bradley made you feel? Emma was quiet for a long moment. Her fingers worked the bear's fur, a self-soothing gesture that had become as natural as breathing. Small, she finally said. She made me feel small and wrong and like I shouldn't exist. The jury foreman wiped his eyes. She said my brain was broken. She said I was too weird to be loved. She said Daddy only kept me because he had to. She said someday he'd get tired of me and give me away. Did you believe her? Yes. Emma's voice cracked. For a long time, yes. Every day she told me I was broken. Every day she made the other kids laugh at me. Every day I thought maybe today Daddy will realize she's right. Maybe today he'll give up. Jake couldn't breathe. Tears streamed down his face, but he didn't move to wipe them. What changed Emma? Emma looked past Foster, past the jury, directly at her father. He came. He came when nobody told him to. He saw what she was doing. He didn't give up. He didn't think I was broken. He thought I was perfect. She smiled, small but real. And he brought wolves. Wolves, the Iron Wolves, Daddy's family. They came to protect us. 200 of them. They filled up the whole school. And when they looked at me, they didn't see broken. They saw pack. They said I was one of them now. They said wolves protect their own. Emma turned to face the jury directly. I'm not broken. My brain works different, but different isn't broken. Mrs. Bradley is the broken one. She hurt kids because it made her feel big. She made money from making children cry. That's broken. Not me. She looked at Patricia Bradley then. The first time she'd made eye contact with her abuser since the trial began. You were wrong about everything. Daddy didn't give me away. He saved me. And I'm not too weird to be loved. I'm loved by my whole pack." Emma climbed down from the witness stand with quiet dignity. The jury was destroyed. The defense rested without calling Patricia Bradley to testify. Her lawyer had probably advised against it. What could she possibly say? The evidence was her own creation. Her own voice narrated her crimes. Her own camera had documented everything. Closing arguments were brief. Diane Foster summarized the evidence, the pattern, the deliberate targeting of vulnerable children. She reminded the jury of the 47 victims, the 8 years of abuse, the financial records proving premeditation and profit motive. This defendant turned children's suffering into a business, she concluded. She exploited the most vulnerable among us for money and attention. She threatened them into silence. She manipulated systems designed to protect them. And when she was finally caught, she wasn't caught by those systems. She was caught by a father who trusted his instincts and refused to be told his daughter's pain was normal. She turned to the jury one last time. Find her guilty. Find her guilty for Emma and Sophie Torres. Find her guilty for the 45 other children she exploited. Find her guilty for every child who might have been next if she hadn't been stopped. Send a message that this will not be tolerated, that children matter, that predators will be held accountable. The defense closing was short and hopeless. Even the public defender seemed relieved when it was over. Judge Washington gave the jury their instructions. They deliberated for 47 minutes. The courtroom packed even fuller for the verdict. Jake sat between his daughters, their hands clasped together, the bear resting in Emma's lap. Behind them, Reaper and Bear and Tank and the full Iron Wolves chapter waited in silence. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood. We have your honor. On the charge of child abuse in the 1st degree, guilty. A murmur swept through the courtroom. On the charge of exploitation of minors, guilty. On the charge of unlawful recording of children, guilty. On the charge of trafficking of child abuse material, guilty. On the charge of child endangerment, guilty. Each word landed like a hammer. Patricia Bradley collapsed against her lawyer, sobbing. The sound was ugly, desperate, the grief of someone watching their entire life crumble to dust. Sophie didn't look away. Emma didn't look away. They watched their abuser face the consequences of her choices. Judge Washington spoke over the noise. The defendant is remanded into custody pending sentencing, which will take place in 30 days. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. It was over. Outside the courthouse, Jake gathered his daughters in his arms. You did it, he said, his voice thick. Both of you. You did it. We all did it, Sophie corrected. You and us and the wolves. Reaper approached his weathered face, showing something Jake had never seen before. Tears. Little wolves, he said gruffly. You made me proud today. You made the whole pack proud. Emma reached up and touched his vest. We're really pack now. Forever, little one. Forever. The courthouse steps filled with iron wolves, their formation creating a protective barrier between the Torres family and the media swarming for statements. Detective Chen appeared at Jake's side. The sentencing won't be for a month, but based on the charges and the evidence, she's looking at 15 to 25 years. She'll never teach again. Her name will be on every registry that exists. Good, Sophie said firmly. Chen smiled at the little girl. You were incredible in there, both of you. I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like what you did today. We just told the truth, Emma said. Daddy says truth is the most important thing. Your daddy is right. Jake looked at his daughters at the wolves surrounding them at the courthouse, where justice had finally been served. 3 months ago, he'd walked into a classroom and found his world shattered. Today he walked out knowing that the monster who'd hurt his children would pay for her crimes. But more than that, his daughters had found their voices. They'd faced their abuser and told their truth. They'd become warriors. Little wolves who would never be prey again. The sentencing came 30 days later. Judge Washington looked at Patricia Bradley with undisguised contempt. "Ms. Bradley, in my 30 years on the bench, I have never encountered a defendant as calculated and cruel as you. You exploited the sacred trust between teachers and students. You targeted the most vulnerable children in your care. You built a financial empire on their tears." He paused, letting his words settle. "I am sentencing you to the maximum allowed under the law. 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. Your teaching license is permanently revoked. You will be registered as a child abuser in every state in this nation. And upon your release, if you survive that long, you will never be permitted to work with children in any capacity again." Patricia Bradley wept as the guards led her away. Jake held his daughter's hands and felt no pity at all. Some monsters didn't deserve compassion. They deserved cages. That evening, the Iron Wolves threw a party. Not a wild party, there were children present, but a celebration. Food and music and laughter and the kind of joy that comes from watching justice prevail. Emma sat on Reaper's shoulders, wearing a tiny leather vest the club had custom-made for her. Honorary Iron Wolf was stitched on the back with a small wolf pup beneath the words. Sophie had one too. She wore it with fierce pride, strutting among the bikers like she'd always belonged there. "You did good, brother," Reaper said to Jake as they watched the girls play. "You saved your daughters. You changed the system. You started a movement." Guardian Wolves had launched the week before. Chapters in 12 states had already signed on. A hotline for parents who suspected abuse was operational. Training programs for recognizing predatory behavior were being developed. All because one father refused to believe his daughter's suffering was normal. "I didn't do it alone," Jake said. "Nobody does anything alone. That's the whole point. That's what community means." Jake watched Emma laugh as Bear pretended to be a bucking bronco. Watched Sophie organize a group of younger kids into something resembling a formation. His daughters were healing. His family was whole. And somewhere in a federal prison, Patricia Bradley was beginning a sentence she would serve until she was broken. The world wasn't perfect. It never would be. But tonight, in this moment, with wolves all around them and justice finally served, it was close enough. 1 year later, Jake stood in the doorway of a classroom and watched his daughters change the world. Emma was at the front of her second-grade class at Riverside Academy, a school specifically designed for children with different learning needs. She wore a white doctor's coat over her purple dress, a toy stethoscope around her neck, and the confident posture of a child who knew exactly who she was. "My name is Emma Torres," she said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "And when I grow up, I want to be a doctor." Her teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, smiled with genuine warmth. The other students listened with authentic interest. No one laughed. No one pointed. No one recorded her on a hidden phone. "I want to be a doctor because I want to help kids who feel different," Emma continued. "I want to be the kind of doctor who listens, who believes kids when they say something is wrong, who makes them feel safe." She paused, her small hands adjusting the stethoscope. "My brain works different than some people's brains. That used to make me sad. Someone told me I was broken. But I'm not broken, I'm just different. And different isn't wrong. Different is special." Jake's throat tightened. A year ago, Emma couldn't speak in front of her own family. Now she stood before an entire classroom telling her truth without fear. "Any questions?" Ms. Rodriguez asked the class. A boy in the front row raised his hand. "Why do you want to help kids specifically?" Emma's eyes found her father in the doorway. She smiled. "Because someone helped me when I needed it most. And now, I want to do the same for others." The class applauded. Real applause from children who saw Emma as a classmate, a friend, someone worth celebrating. Sophie went next. She strode to the front of the room with the confidence of a born leader, her own costume, a small black blazer over a white shirt. She looked like a tiny lawyer, which was exactly the point. "My name is Sophie Torres. I'm Emma's twin sister, and when I grow up, I'm going to be a lawyer." "Why a lawyer?" Ms. Rodriguez asked. "Because lawyers fight for people who can't fight for themselves. They make sure bad people face consequences. They protect kids and families and anyone who needs help." Sophie's jaw set with familiar determination. "Last year someone hurt my sister. Hurt both of us. For a long time we couldn't tell anyone. We were scared. We thought no one would believe us. But our dad believed us. And when he found out the truth, he didn't just get mad. He got help. He got justice. And now that person is in prison for 25 years. A murmur rippled through the classroom. The story had been on national news retroactively, though the girls' identities were protected. Some kids had heard versions. None knew they were sitting next to the actual survivors. "I learned something important," Sophie continued. "Your voice matters. Even when you're scared. Even when someone tells you to be quiet. Even when you think no one will listen. Your voice matters. And sometimes using it can save not just yourself, but other people too." She looked at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. "My sister and I helped put a bad person away. We told our truth. We didn't stay silent. And because of that, 46 other kids got justice too. 46 kids she hurt before us." The classroom was absolutely still. "So that's why I want to be a lawyer, because I already know what it feels like to fight for something that matters, and I want to spend my whole life doing it." The applause that followed was thunderous. Emma ran to Sophie and grabbed her hand. The twins stood together, matching grins on their faces, and looked back at their father in the doorway. Jake gave them a thumbs up. They gave him one back. Their language, their connection, their promise to each other that everything would be okay. After school, Jake took the girls to the Iron Wolves clubhouse for their weekly visit. It had become a tradition over the past year. Every Saturday, Emma and Sophie spent the afternoon with their extended family. They'd learn about motorcycles from Reaper Help Bear in the kitchen, play board games with Tank's grandchildren, and generally run wild among men who most people crossed the street to avoid. The clubhouse had changed since the trial. A new wing had been added, funded by donations from across the country. It housed the Guardian Wolves headquarters, a fully operational child advocacy center with hotlines, counselors, legal resources, and trained volunteers ready to respond when families needed help. The organization had grown beyond anything Jake had imagined. 47 chapters across 32 states, over 3,000 volunteers, partnerships with schools, law enforcement, and child protective services. A network dedicated to one simple principle: no child suffers alone. Reaper met them at the door, his silver beard now sporting tiny purple ribbons that Emma had braided in during last week's visit. "There's my little wolves," he said, kneeling down to their level. "How was career day?" "Perfect," Sophie declared. Emma talked in front of everyone. She didn't even get nervous. "I got a little nervous," Emma admitted. "But I remembered what you said. Wolves don't run. Wolves face things, Reaper's weathered face cracked into a smile. "That's my girl. Both of you. Come on." Bear made cookies. The girls raced inside, their laughter echoing off the walls. Jake hung back with Reaper. "How you holding up, brother?" Reaper asked. "Better. Every day a little better." Jake watched his daughters disappear into the kitchen. "A year ago, I didn't know if they'd ever smile again. Now look at them." Kids are resilient, especially when they're loved, especially when they're protected. Reaper clapped Jake's shoulder. "You did good, Jake. You saved them." "We saved them. I couldn't have done any of this alone." "That's what Pack is for. Speaking of which," Reaper's expression turned serious. "We got a call yesterday from a father in Michigan. His son's been coming home with bruises. School says the kid's clumsy. Dad doesn't believe it." Jake's jaw tightened. "What do you need?" "We've got it covered. Sending 5 brothers out tomorrow. Just wanted you to know this thing you started, it's working. Kids are getting help who never would have gotten it before." Jake thought about that father in Michigan. Thought about the fear he must be feeling. The desperation. The same helplessness Jake had felt a year ago when his daughters were fading, and he didn't know why. "Keep me posted. Always." The afternoon passed in a blur of cookies and laughter and motorcycle lessons that had both girls convinced they'd be riding by next summer. Jake sat on the clubhouse porch, watching the sun set, thinking about everything that had changed. Maria appeared beside him with 2 cups of coffee. She'd become a regular at the clubhouse, too, adopted by the Wolves as an honorary abuela. Tank's grandmother and Maria had become inseparable friends, bonded by their shared love of cooking and their fierce protective instincts toward children. "You look thoughtful, mijo," Maria said, settling into the chair beside him. "Just remembering. This time last year I was scared I'd lost them forever. Now they're thriving. Now they're happy. Now they're safe." Jake nodded slowly. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For something else to go wrong. For the nightmares to come back." Maria reached over and patted his hand. "The nightmares might come back sometimes. Healing isn't a straight line, but those girls have something most people never find. They have a father who fights for them, a family that shows up, a community that protects them." "They have you," Maria smiled. "They have all of us, and they always will." Inside, Emma's laughter rang out, followed by Sophie's indignant protest about something probably cheating at cards, which Tank was notorious for. Jake closed his eyes and let the sound wash over him. This was what healing sounded like. This was what love looked like. That evening, Detective Chen called with news. "We identified another victim," she said. "A girl who was in Bradley's class 6 years ago. She's 15 now. She saw the news coverage and finally told her parents what happened." Jake's hand tightened on the phone. "How is she?" "Struggling. She's been in therapy for years, but nobody knew why. She couldn't tell anyone what happened because Bradley convinced her it was her fault, that she deserved it, that no one would believe her. But she's talking now, because of your daughters, because she saw them speak up at the trial, because she realized she wasn't alone." Chen paused. "Jake, there are probably more. More kids we'll never identify. More victims who'll carry that trauma forever. But every time this story gets told, every time someone speaks up, it gives others permission to do the same." "What happens to the girl?" "She's getting help. Real help. Her parents are devastated they didn't know, but they're stepping up. The Guardian Wolves chapter in her area has already reached out." Jake thought about that 15-year-old girl. 6 years of silence. 6 years of thinking she was alone. 6 years of carrying a weight, that should never have been hers. My daughters want to start speaking, publicly, about what happened, about how to recognize the signs. Chen was quiet for a moment. Are they ready for that? Sophie's been ready since the trial. Emma's getting there. They want to help other kids. They say if their story can stop even one person from hurting a child, it's worth telling. They're remarkable. They learned it from their pack. 2 weeks later, Jake stood backstage at a child safety conference holding his daughter's hands. The auditorium was filled with teachers, parents, administrators, and advocates from across the country. They'd come to hear from experts about recognizing abuse, creating safe environments, and building systems that protected children instead of predators. The Torres family was the final presentation. Nervous? Jake asked. Sophie shook her head. We've practiced 100 times. Emma squeezed her bear. She still carried him to important events, a comfort object that had become a symbol of survival rather than trauma. I'm a little nervous, Emma admitted. But Dr. Pierce says that's okay. Nervous means you care about doing something well. That's exactly right, baby. The moderator appeared backstage. You're on in 2 minutes. Ready? Jake looked at his daughters. Ready. Both girls nodded. They walked onto that stage together as a family and faced an audience of 1,500 people. Sophie spoke first. A year ago, my sister and I were hurt by someone who was supposed to protect us. A teacher. Someone we were told to trust. For 3 weeks, we suffered in silence because we were scared, because we were threatened, because we thought no one would believe us. She paused, letting her words settle. But our dad believed us, even though we couldn't tell him what was wrong, even though everyone said he was overreacting, even though the school told him everything was fine. He trusted his instincts. He showed up unannounced. He saw the truth. And when he saw it, he didn't just accept it. He fought back. Emma stepped forward. I'm autistic. That means my brain works different. The teacher who hurt us used that against me. She said I was broken. She said nobody could love me. She said my dad would give me away. I believed her. For weeks, I believed her. Her voice was steady, clear, stronger than Jake had ever heard it. But she was lying. My brain isn't broken. Different isn't broken. And my dad didn't give me away. He fought for me. He brought 200 people to my school to stand with me. He made sure the whole world knew what she did. Emma held up her bear. This is Wolfie. I got him after everything happened. He reminds me that I'm part of a pack, that I have people who love me, that I'm never alone. Every kid deserves to feel that way. Every kid deserves people who believe them. Sophie took over again. We're here to tell you what to look for, what we wish someone had seen, because the signs were there. We were withdrawing. We stopped eating. We stopped playing. We couldn't sleep. We cried every night. We flinched when someone mentioned school. She listed each sign with the precision of someone who'd rehearsed, but was speaking from the heart. We couldn't tell anyone what was happening because we'd been threatened, but our behavior told the story. If the adults in our lives had known what to look for, they might have asked better questions. They might have pushed harder. They might have saved us weeks of suffering. Emma added, kids don't always have words for what's happening to them. Sometimes they can only show you through how they act. Please pay attention. Please believe them. Please trust your instincts, even when someone tells you you're wrong. Sophie's voice rose with passion. And if you're a kid watching this, if something is happening to you that feels wrong, tell someone. Keep telling until someone listens. You're not bad. You're not broken. The person hurting you is wrong. And there are people who will believe you. There are people who will fight for you. You just have to find them. Emma finished with the words that had become their motto. Wolves protect their own. Find your pack, and never ever stay silent. The audience rose in a standing ovation. Jake stood beside his daughters, tears streaming down his face, and watched 1,500 people applaud two little girls who'd survived something horrific and turned their pain into purpose. This was their legacy. This was what courage looked like. The months that followed brought more speaking engagements, more interviews, more opportunities to spread their message. Sophie became an unofficial spokesperson for Guardian Wolves, attending events with Reaper and speaking with a fire that made grown men weep. Emma wrote a children's book with Maria's help, a story about a little wolf who felt different but found her pack. It was published 3 months later and donated to schools across the country. The organization grew exponentially. By the end of the year, Guardian Wolves operated in 46 states with over 8,000 volunteers. They'd intervened in over 200 cases, helping families navigate systems that too often failed children. Laws changed. Mandatory social media background checks for teachers passed in 18 states. Recording policies in classrooms were reformed. Child advocacy positions were created in districts that had never had them, all because one father refused to accept that his daughter's pain was normal, all because 2 little girls found the courage to speak. On the anniversary of Picture Day, Jake took his daughters back to Sunrise Elementary. The school had been renamed Sunrise Community Academy. New administration, new policies, new commitment to protecting every child who walked through its doors. Principal Washington, no relation to the judge, met them at the entrance. Mr. Torres, Emma, Sophie, thank you for coming. Sophie looked up at the building with an expression Jake couldn't quite read. It looks different. We've made a lot of changes. Would you like to see? They walked through halls that had once been filled with Emma's tears and Sophie's silent fear. Now they held displays about kindness, about speaking up, about recognizing when something was wrong. Room 107. Patricia Bradley's old classroom had been converted into a counseling center, a safe space where children could talk about anything that was bothering them with trained professionals who knew how to listen. We call it the Wolf Den, Principal Washington said, in honor of your daughters. Every child in this school knows that if they need help, they can come here. No questions, no judgment, just support. Emma touched the small wolf statue by the door. This is where bad things happened. Yes, but now it's where healing happens. Because of you. Sophie slipped her hand into Jake's. Can we go? I don't want to stay here. Jake understood. Some places would never feel safe, no matter how much they changed. Some memories couldn't be overwritten with fresh paint and good intentions. Let's go home. They walked out of that school for the last time, leaving behind the place where their nightmare began, but taking with them everything it had taught them. About courage, about voice, about the power of refusing to be silenced. That night, Jake tucked his daughters into bed one final time as 7-year-olds. Tomorrow was their birthday. Tomorrow they would be 8. Another year older, another year further from the worst days of their lives. Daddy? Sophie's voice was sleepy but content. Yeah, baby. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you didn't come to school that day? Jake sat on the edge of her bed. Sometimes. I think about it too. I think maybe we'd still be scared. Maybe she'd still be hurting us. Maybe nobody would ever know. But I did come. And people do know. And she's never going to hurt anyone again. Sophie nodded slowly. Because you trusted your instincts. Because I trusted you. Even when you couldn't tell me what was wrong, I knew something was wrong. Your behavior told me. Your silence told me. I just had to learn how to listen. Emma stirred in her bed across the room. Daddy, thank you. For what, baby? For believing us. For bringing the wolves. For making sure everyone heard our story. Jake crossed to her bed and kissed her forehead. Thank you for being brave enough to tell it. We weren't brave at first. That's okay. Courage isn't about never being scared. It's about being scared and doing the right thing anyway. You did that. Both of you. Sophie yawned. Daddy, can we do something tomorrow for our birthday? Anything, baby. What do you want? I want to visit the Guardian Wolves hotline. I want to answer calls. I want to help other kids like people helped us. Jake smiled. I think that can be arranged. Emma added, and cake, wolf-shaped cake, with purple frosting. Wolf-shaped cake with purple frosting. Got it. He stood between their beds, looking at his daughters in the dim glow of their nightlight. They'd grown so much in a year. Not just physically, but in ways that couldn't be measured. They'd faced their abuser in court. They'd told their story to thousands. They'd become advocates for children who had no voice. They'd transformed from victims into warriors, from scared little girls into wolves. I love you, Jake said. Both of you. More than anything in this world. We love you too, Daddy, they said in unison. Sleep well. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. He walked to the door and paused, looking back at them one more time. Two little girls, safe in their beds, surrounded by stuffed wolves, and the knowledge that they were protected, that they were loved, that they would never, ever face darkness alone. Jake Torres thought about the morning he almost didn't go to that school. The morning everyone told him he was overreacting. The morning he decided to trust his instincts anyway. That decision had saved his daughters, had exposed a predator, had launched a movement that protected children across the nation. One father, two daughters, 200 wolves, and a truth that would echo through generations. Silence protects abusers, but voice creates justice. The Torres family had found their voice, and they would never be silent again. Patricia Bradley died in prison 4 years later, alone and forgotten. Her name became a warning in teacher training programs across the country. Her case study appeared in textbooks about recognizing predatory behavior. Her face was shown in mandatory training videos, an example of what happens when systems fail and predators slip through. Emma Torres graduated from medical school at 26, specializing in pediatric psychology. She opened a clinic that served special needs children, a place where every child was believed, where every voice mattered, where different was celebrated rather than exploited. Sophie Torres became a prosecutor at 25, one of the youngest in her state's history. She specialized in crimes against children, winning case after case, building a reputation as someone who fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. The twins never stopped speaking, never stopped advocating, never stopped using their voices to protect others. Guardian Wolves celebrated its 10th anniversary with chapters in every state and 14 countries. The organization had helped over 50,000 children, had trained hundreds of thousands of volunteers, had changed laws, changed systems, changed lives. Jake Torres watched his daughters accept awards, give speeches, and transform the world one child at a time. Reaper passed away peacefully at 78, surrounded by brothers and honorary wolves who'd become his extended family. His last words were to Jake, "Take care of the pack." Jake did. He always did. Because that's what wolves do. They protect their own. They show up when called. They refuse to let the vulnerable suffer alone. And they never ever forget that one person's courage can change everything. Emma and Sophie Torres started as scared little girls in clown costumes, tears streaming down their painted faces, believing they were broken and alone. They ended as warriors, as advocates, as wolves. Their story proved something essential about human nature. That darkness exists, but so does light. That predators walk among us, but so do protectors. That children can be hurt, but they can also heal. And that healing, when transformed into purpose, becomes the most powerful force in the world. 3 weeks of silence became a lifetime of voice. 2 scared little girls became 2 fierce women. One father's instinct became a movement that saved thousands. Because Jake Torres showed up when it mattered. Because the wolves answered when called. Because Emma and Sophie refused to let their trauma be the end of their story. They made it the beginning. And that made all the difference.